Okay, many thanks for joining us today. We will be having an interactive session with Helen and Sophia from Loughborough University. In this seminar, we will learn about the Institute for Diplomacy and International Government at Loughborough University and all the offers and everything we need to know. Hi, Helen. So joining us today is Helen from Loughborough University. She's going to be telling us everything we need to know. Hi, Helen, over to you. Trust we're going to have an interactive section with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Gloria. So the first thing to say then is that we're talking about the Institute for Diplomacy and International Governance, or IDIG as we call it. And it is Loughborough University, but, and this is so important, it's based in London. And there you can see a skyline of London. We're based on the Olympic Park. London hosted the Olympics the Summer Olympics in 2012. And part of the legacy was to put our campus onto, to create a second campus for Loughborough University in London. And that's where I'm speaking from now. And that's where IDIG is situated. So you're in communication today with Loughborough University London. Also on the screen, you might be able to see is my colleague Sophie Yang, and she has a pretty picture in the background of our building and the outside of the building. So thank you, Sophie. Okay, next slide, please. I'm Helen Drake, that's an old picture, and I'm a professor of French and European Studies. And since 2017, I've been director of IDIG, of the Institute. And I used to work on the other campus, so I know the university very well. And if you come to London, if you come to IDIG in London, you're part of the big university. So Loughborough University has a very good reputation in the UK and internationally, and you would be on its London campus, as I say. So that's me, and that's my email address, and you can also find me and follow me on Twitter, if you like. I still use Twitter. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a snapshot, a screenshot of my colleagues. my academic colleagues. So IDIG is very much about the team. You can see I have a number of colleagues, including Phil at the top is from, he's a former British diplomat, and he now works out of MIT in Massachusetts in the United States. So we have a very diverse team in terms of our academic backgrounds and our expertise and so on. And yes, so we're very much about the team. I like working with my team. My colleagues are all smart, they're motivated, and we work very well together to make IDIG a place for students to explore new areas and prepare for their career. Next slide, please. And IDIG, so that was the staff, but really, obviously, IDIG is first and foremost about our students. And there you have a picture, you can see the Union Jack. That was taken a couple of years ago. And our students, it was during the Brexit negotiations between the UK and the EU. And our students were simulating a negotiation and working out their own treaty. And so there were teams, one team was the EU, the European Union, and the other was the United Kingdom. So we are very much here for our master students. And if you could turn to the next slide, please, Sophie. And I'd say that we have, so Loughborough University London, if you don't already know, is exclusively postgraduate. We have around, at the moment, 600, 700 postgraduates, not all in IDIG. There are 7 institutes in Loughborough, London, and IDIG is just one of them. In IDIG this year, we have about 50 students, 50. And I'd say across the school, the London school, and in IDIG, we have, we have a particular approach to teaching. So it is very much research informed. All of us who teach you will be academics, so scholars in our own right. We write, we publish, we conduct our own research. And we also work to make sure that we emphasize the skills that we think students need or would like in order to make that bridge between undergraduate study and the world of work. And so that's a sort of another principle. When we say learning for impact, we understand that students, I think almost all students who come to IDIG are doing so in order to make a transition, a step towards a professional career, the world of work. And so our approach to teaching is across, those are the principles of our teaching. And IDIG has a suite, a collection, if you like, of master's programs, which I'm going to present. And they all share some content, and they also all each offer a specialization. So I'm going to, first of all, quickly introduce the different programs. So a program, a degree, if you like, and then I'm going to go into more detail on each of them. So as you can see there, thanks Sophie, on the screen, we have a number of master students. And one of the things I want to say straight away up front is that all of our master's programs have a 60 credit dissertation, which equates to one third, 33% of the overall credit. So the master's program is 180 credits in total, and the dissertation is 60. And so when I talk about the individual programs, I'll be concentrating on the modules, on the other modules. So don't forget that as well as the other modules, each of which are 15 credits, there's also the dissertation. Every student takes a dissertation. Okay, so let's have a brief introduction to, you're just going to see at the moment one slide per program. So Diplomacy and International Relations, or DIR, gives you the most, so this program offers the most choice really, and allows you to tailor your program to your own goals and interests. So that's sort of that's the general program, if you like. And so I've put there very much how the world works, for better or for worse. Okay, so the second program, they're not in any particular order, I should say, is Diplomacy, International Politics and Trade. And in this program, where the key word, if you like, as well as diplomacy, is politics. And we look at politics and political choices in a variety of, and you'll see in a moment when I come on to the different modules. We're taking a broad definition of politics, and we're taking a broad definition of trade. So that's, yeah, okay, and I'll come back to that when I look at the modules. Next up, looks quite similar, but the key word there is international business. So diplomacy, international business and trade, and very much looking at business and trade in a global environment. And one of the things that we can do in IDIG at Loughborough London is offer students the chance to take modules from other institutes, including, for example, international management or innovation and entrepreneurship. So if you're interested in how diplomacy, international business and trade combine, then I think Loughborough London is a good place to do it, and you would be based in IDIG. Okay, moving on is security, peace building and diplomacy. And as it says there, we take a broad definition and understanding of security. I mean, in many respects, so much of today's world sort of revolves around understandings of security and security policies. And we try to take a view of how security very much is not only a national preoccupation, but very much an international preoccupation. So security links the world, and peace building is also not only, if you like, about international peace, but very much about the communities that are involved in building peace in their locality. And then finally, we have a program that we share with a joint program with the Institute for International Management called Risk, Governance and International Management. And the focus here, less so on diplomacy, but on the multinational company and how they devise strategies and policies to manage risks from the environment. So it's really useful if you're planning to work in a multinational company or a business in general, to combine that understanding with knowledge and understanding of how the world works through diplomacy and international governance as well. So, so thank you. And then this program here, so I've talked about 4 IDIG programs. I've talked about a joint program, and then this is our latest offering, if you like, international development. And this is run not just in IDIG, but across the whole school. So I said we have 7 institutes, and the purpose of this program, as it says here, is for those of you who are interested in international development. By that we mean, you probably know what that means, but efforts to try and redistribute wealth and equalize people's access to the world's riches, if you like. So in that program, we're very much interested in how international development is linked to social change and social justice. So it's not so much sort of looking from the top down about governments and so on, but really bottom up. Okay, and the next slide is important because I'm going to go into some detail now, and I also want you to understand that between now and when you might join IDIG, whether it's in October or January next year, certain modules are still subject to change. That's just the way of life, really, the way of life in a university, that we may have to make changes to the program, but they'll always be with a view to still delivering on the program aims and objectives. So just bear that in mind. What I'm going to present is the information that you can find on the website, but please bear in mind that that might be updated. Okay, so let's start with our general program. And you're going to get familiar, I think, with the structure of the programs. I'll go through each program. Let me start by saying, for every program in IDIG, about the structure. First of all, there are 2 teaching semesters. Semester 1 runs from October through to the end of January. Semester 2 runs from February through to the middle of June. So that's the first thing, and I'm going to talk in terms of semesters. A second thing that I want you to know, and that's quite unusual, is that we teach in what are called blocks. So when we talk about a module here, that module will run on its own in over 3 weeks. And over those 3 weeks, you have roughly 27 to 30 hours in the classroom, roughly 10 hours a week. So in the 3-week block, you have your teaching, you have your classes, you have your group work, your out of class work. And then in the 4th week in that block, it's your assignment. So right now I'm on campus, it's very quiet because the students are at home doing their assignments. It's the 4th week. So try and remember that. Then all the programs are in 2 semesters, and each module occurs in a block, more or less on its own. So this is what you can find on the website. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's to get you used to the idea. So in this program, the first one up, this is semester 1. You have 3 compulsory modules, and then you have a choice. And there's a good reason for having compulsory modules at the beginning. It's so that you get to know your cohort. It's so that you can work together, and because these are subjects that we think are important. So we always try and balance sort of giving you the basics through the compulsory modules with giving you choice. And I think we find that students tend to prefer as much choice as possible, and we bear that in mind. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So this is the same program, DIR, Diplomacy and International Relations, and we're moving into semester 2. So in semester 2, it looks more complicated, but that is just representing the blocks. So in semester 2, you'd have a compulsory module, foreign policy analysis, and then you choose. However, the choices are organized into 3 blocks, if that makes sense. And we can answer more questions later. So you've got 3 blocks. The first one, for example, you have a choice of 2, the second one a choice of 2, and the third one a choice of 3. And the third one, the bottom choice, if you like, that starts global cities, that's where we're trying to create the most choice, taking from modules from other institutions. I'm going to say a bit more after the programs about the 2 modules, collaborative project and sport, politics and diplomacy. Okay, next slide, please. We're moving to the program International Business and Trade. At the moment, you can see that in the first semester, we think it's important that you cover all of those modules, and therefore they're compulsory. However, they are subject to change because we've been trying to introduce a bit more choice for you in that first semester, or to put it another way, we want to give you the opportunity to take modules from outside the institute. You can see that diplomacy in the digital age and international negotiations don't change. Those are really sort of key flagship modules, and I think they're great. Okay, so that's the first semester. Next slide. Second semester, we're on this program DIBT, Diplomacy, International Business and Trade. You've got your compulsory modules, and then you've got your optional modules. And if you look in the middle block, for example, you can see you've got at least 3 options there: corporate governance, comparative political economy, corporate social responsibility, which very much come from the world of international business. And that's where, excuse me, that's where you get to specialize. I'm just going to have a drink of water and cough. Okay, let's try again. So let's move on to the third of our programs in IDIG, Diplomacy, International Politics and Trade. Same sort of structure. In the first semester at the moment, all compulsory. I don't think, we're not planning any change to diplomacy in the digital age or international negotiations. They're core. We are looking at allowing a bit more choice for you in the second half of the semester, instead of politics in times of crisis. In semester 2, and you will get time to ask questions about this. So in semester 2, we make compulsory media, social movements and politics. We think that's essential for you if you're studying politics in its international context. Then again, same structure, we open up choices, 3 blocks, and at the moment in each of those blocks you have a choice. So I do think it looks like a rather nice program, and it's great with the block structure. One of the reasons for it is so that we can pull on modules from other institutes. It's like an integrated timetable. Okay, and let's move on to the fourth exclusively IDIG program, Security, Peace Building and Diplomacy. Same sort of structure. You have your compulsory modules in the first semester. We're looking to include some choice there as we've opened up to other institutions. And then if we look at the second semester, you have a compulsory peace building module, which is not surprising, and on this particular program. And then you have a number of choices in the different blocks. So that's what our four exclusively IDIG programs look like. And that's right. So that completes the overview of the IDIG programs. So I mentioned a joint program with management, and I mentioned a school program with international development, but I'm not going to go into more details of those now. If you have questions, we can answer them afterwards, or failing that, we can provide information after the seminar. So let me move on to a couple of the modules that I want to say a bit about. I've just picked these ones out, really. They're our newest modules, and we've developed them again because we've noticed what students are interested in, and also to really make the most of the fact that you, students, will be on a multidisciplinary campus, and we want to really take advantage of that to offer you subjects that maybe you wouldn't get elsewhere. So this new module, we just ran it for the first time, and we ran it with our Institute for Sport Business. And we are sort of passionate about the way that sport, politics and diplomacy absolutely overlap and are integrated. You only have to think, I talked about the Olympics that were here in London. The UK has used the Olympics for its diplomatic purposes in order to sort of project the UK onto a world stage. And that's just a very small example. So the module looks at a number of examples from all sorts of economies, not just Western countries like the UK, to look at how sport can be used positively, but also negatively. And we talk about sport washing, for example. So it's a critical understanding of this interplay. And we were really happy. We even had some Olympic gold winning athletes who came in and talked about something really interesting. They said there should be no more sporting mega events because they're environmentally damaging. And so they talked to students about their experience as Olympic athletes and how they have become passionate environmental advocates for the end of sporting mega events. So really, really interesting. The second module, this is a snapshot of one of our newest modules, which draws from across the school. My colleague Tatavik Natsakanyan is teaching this, the politics of violence, development, security and sustainability. And you can see on the screen there that we understand political violence not only as physical, but structural and symbolic, absolutely. We're not just thinking of war and conflict, but the way in the everyday that interactions, discourse, language, structures around gender and race can also incorporate violence understood in that way. And so we look at these competing conceptions of so-called violence drawn from both Western traditions and elsewhere in the world, really importantly. Okay. Oh yes, so I've talked about two new modules, and I have here just come back to the dissertation. So we're in May at the moment, and our students are literally this week drafting their dissertation proposal. You can see on the word there, on the screen there, proposal. That's worth 10%. Students have to demonstrate that they understand the basics of research. And once they've done that, they also have to do a viva. That's an oral presentation, which is another 10%. And then the 80% of this big module is done by the students with our support in June and July. and then the student works independently in August. And this is where students, they can align, they look at what I research, at what my colleagues, my team you saw earlier research, and maybe align. That's where you can really specialize and draw on our research. And you can see they're 0%. So we're very emphatic about ethical research. If you're involving participants in your research, then how do you do that ethically? Okay, keep going. So the next slide talks about, that's just the fact that most dissertations are standard research, so students at their desk doing a 10,000 word project. On the right hand side of the screen, there are some opportunities to do the dissertation based in an outside organisation that enters into a contract with us. And we do have some students this year in IDIG doing exactly that. And that's a great way of working with an organisation, maybe in a field that you subsequently would like to work in. So that's called collaborative dissertation, which takes me on to the next module that I want to zoom in on, called the collaborative project. So you may remember that on previous screens, students have the option, at the moment optional, to do something called a collaborative project, another 15 credit module. Could you go back, Sophie, to where you were, please? That's it. Yeah. So the collaborative project is collaborative in two ways. First of all, students collaborate with each other in a group project. Secondly, the group or team collaborates with an outside organisation to solve a problem, maybe a business problem. And it's to encourage creativity, innovation, and to help students really understand what an organisation wants to achieve commercially or otherwise. And we in IDIG this year have worked with an NGO, a non-governmental organisation called Minority Rights International. And they have existed for decades to protect and promote the rights of minorities internationally. And the project was to offer advice to MRG, the organisation, on how they could work with the United Nations to bring to the table a treaty to protect minorities from businesses and business violations of human rights. So that might sound a bit complicated, but our students have done really, really well on the project. So that's a good example. And if you go to the next slide, please. Those are, yes, so on the left you have, so we have worked with Chatham House and we've worked with MRGI. So I've just talked about MRG. Chatham House is a world-leading think tank for international affairs based in London. And there you can see last year's group of students photographed in front of Chatham House. Okay, almost finished. I'm moving on now. So I've talked about the curricula. I've zoomed in on a number of projects. I've talked about, modules. I've talked about the dissertation and the collaborative project. And now let me finish with some extracurricular activities. So by practitioner, we mean professionals, people who work, in this case, in negotiation and diplomacy. And so this, in the picture, you can see this was, you have a student, as you can see, wearing masks. So this is just coming out of COVID, out of the acute phase of COVID. And we had a visit from the Deputy Chief of Mission of the Indonesian Embassy in London. And he came and gave a very good talk on international negotiation and the life of a diplomat. And this was run for all of the students, but it was a session in the international negotiation module that I talked about earlier. Another example, next slide, please, is a bit more recent. So exactly a year ago, we invited a guest, the Baroness Caroline Cox. She's a life peer at the House of Lords here in London, and she's a founder of an NGO, HART, Humanitarian Aid Relief Trust. And that's a picture, the photo there is of her the picture is not of us here in London, but it's of her and her work with the charity. And she came and she talked on the peace building module that you saw on a previous slide. And finally, for today, we have a budget to support students who wish to put on their own events. And this was an excellent event about 18 months ago, organised entirely by our students. We provided the venue, the catering, and they invited two diplomats and a political consultant. And they came and talked, so it was a networking event on diplomatic careers organised by our students. And that's it, final slide. I'd just like to say thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to receiving your comments, and I very much hope to see some of you in person here in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Next, I'm going to briefly talk about the entry requirement, the fees for our students who might be interested in the programs. First, let's go to the entry requirement. For all the programs my colleague Helen just mentioned, we require a UK 2-2 honor degree or equivalent international qualifications in any subject area. So when it comes to a Nigeria qualifications, you can see what's equivalent. If you are doing a 7-point scale GPA, we require 4. Or a 3.5 for a 5-point scale, or a 2.5 for a 4-point scale GPA. And then let's move to the English. So there are many different English qualifications we can accept. First, let's talk about IELTS. So if you are doing IELTS, we require IELTS overall 6.5 with no subtest below 6.0. If you are doing PTE, we require overall 67 with no less than 63 in each band. Or TOEFL, we need a 92 overall with no less than 22 in each test. If you have done a Nigeria senior school certificate, NECO, we require minimum grade C or 6. So if you have done this and meet the minimum grade, we can waive your English qualification. So if you haven't done any of this, but have done something else, you can see the full list of our acceptable English qualifications on the website. Here is the link, and also you can see the screenshot of what it looks like. So there are tests of English for speakers of a foreign language, or the UK or transnational school-based qualifications, also different ones. Next, let's move down to the fees. So I've separated into tuition fees and the living cost. First, for tuition fees. For 2023 and for 2023 intake, the standard tuition fee for programs in Institute for Diplomacy and International Governance is £24,000, which is briefly equivalent to 30 million Nigerian naira. The living cost based on the UK visa and immigration requirement for months of study in the UK in London, each is £1,334 per month, and for students who are doing a master program, that's 12 months in total, which is £16,000, and also equivalent to 930,000 Nigeria naira. In Loughborough, we have a very exciting scholarship, which is called Creating Better Future CBF Scholarship for African Students, which is 20% off for your awarded as a tuition fee discount. For students who are eligible to get this scholarship, first you need to have an offer to study with us for the 2023 or 2024 January intake, and you are also a self-funded student and also domiciled in Africa. So if you have any other scholarships, so in Loughborough, you can only be eligible for one for one scholarship, and you will be awarded the single scholarship which provides the highest discount to international tuition fees. For this Creating Better Future scholarship, you don't need to apply, you don't need to do anything. So this will be offered to you automatically if you meet all the criteria. Okay. In the last, I want to move on about something about the accommodation. I know students traveling half the world to a different city. Accommodation is something you want to have a bit idea first. In London, although we don't have our Loughborough version, our own accommodations, but we do work closely with accommodation providers. So we provide a discounted rate accommodation for students. There are two main options. First one is called the United Stratford one. United is a UK-wide accommodation provider. So they have their accommodations in the most of the big cities in the UK. So the nearest one for Loughborough London is called United Stratford one. And like I said earlier, we have the discounted rate for our students, and you can apply through their website. The second one is called student.com. It's a student version of Rightmove or any other renting house or buying house, this kind of website. So you can put what you need. For example, if you want a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom flat, or a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom house, and you can share with your friends, and you can find the different options. What I want to say is, in London, accommodation is always very, very popular, especially the popular the kind of the houses or flats. So it's important, once you know you are coming to Loughborough London, you got your offer, and try to book this as soon as possible. And in the last, I've left my email address. If you have any other questions, either about the university in general, or the entry requirement, or any other things about your specific situation, just send an email to me. It's y.yng4@loughborough.ac.uk, or you can send an email to our global engagement office, which is the second email address here. Next, I think we can open to questions. Helen and myself are happy to answer any of the questions you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Helen and Sophia. That was an interactive section. Please, if you have questions for Helen or Sophia, you can just drop it in the chat box below, and I'll be reading it to them for them to answer. Okay, so I think I have one here. I said, please, can we have this presentation for clearer view? Is there how we can have this presentation?
I'm happy to share.
Exactly?
Sorry. Are there any benefits?
So, okay, someone's asking if there's any benefits for students with disabilities.
Do you want to say something, Sophie, and then I can say what I know?
Okay,
yeah, I think
your presentation. They're asking if they can have your presentation.
Sorry,
yeah,
I think sorry. Let me go to the first question. For presentation, if you can send me an email, I'm happy to send over the presentation from Helen and myself. Yeah, Helen, maybe you can answer with the questions about the students?
Yeah, so on the benefits for students with disabilities, as far as I'm aware, we don't have benefits in the sense of sort of discounted fees or specific scholarships. What we do have is a strong welfare team, so a team of colleagues who are there to assist and advise students with disabilities, and we do have a lot of provision to accommodate disabilities. I think it's not my area of expertise. I either, well, maybe through Sophie, we can give you the email address of the people who might be able to help with more information. I think I would say that one of the most important things, if you're thinking of applying with a disability, is to, if you're willing, is to inform the international office and to inform the school as early as you can, just to make sure that we're able to accommodate. I mean, the building itself is very modern, very wide gates, with lifts to every floor, wide corridors, and so on. So it depends very much on the nature of the disability and on the extent to which you can share information to help us help you. Do we have courses on religion or theology? No, we don't. As far as I'm aware, no, we certainly don't in IDIG, and I don't think there are any in the school. I suppose one thing to think of, having said that, is that in London there are so many universities, and what you do in your free time is up to you. And so there are schemes that you can borrow books, for example, from other libraries in London, and we encourage students to attend all sorts of events. So you may well be able to find extracurricular activities of interest in religion or theology. And also, I mean, religion in particular, I'm not so sure about theology, but religion and diplomacy are connected, because religious figures internationally, including the Pope, just by way of example, do involve themselves in diplomatic messages, in diplomatic mediation, and so on. So it's quite a good question, but we don't have specific courses on that. September intake, yes, the courses start at the end of September, and we also have a January intake. Sophie, the next questions are for you. HND, and deposit.
Yes. The next question is, do you accept HND? So for our master programs, we don't accept HND as a direct entry. However, if you have done a top-up course after your HND, let's say if you have done HND first and then did a top-up in another UK university and have a bachelor degree, and then you can apply for our master program, and we can accept HND in that situation. And what's the deposit payment for any students who have got the unconditional offer for our programs, for our master programs? And we will require a £2,500 deposit. This is our CAS deposit. Once you have paid the CAS deposit, the university will issue you the CAS, which would be used for you to apply for the UK visa. And the deposit is something you can see on the portal, Loughborough's application portal. Once your offer become unconditional, and you have the button, just to press deposit, and you can see that. And if you have applied through our partner SI UK, so the counselors from SI UK would be they can help you with this with the deposit. And next question is, what's the turnaround time after application? Actually, I was in this meeting this morning that we are very proud in Loughborough. We think we don't want students to wait too long. So normally students would have their, after you have submit your application, and we will review as soon as possible and try to make a decision in 3 to 5 weeks. However, we always try to do this early. I know in the recent couple of weeks, students would have their offer within 2 weeks. So once you have all your documents ready, so I suggest you to do your application as soon as possible.
Okay, so I just have a question for you. I want to ask, I'm aware that it's mostly 2-1 for the requirements. So if someone someone finished with 3.43, would the person be considered?
It's a 2-2 actually. It's a 2-2, not a 2-1.
Yeah, I know, but it's like a close to 2-1.
Close to
Sophie?
Sorry, you mean the student's grade is close to 2-1?
Yes, 3.43.
Yeah, so first, for any programs in IDIG, we require a 2-2. So if students get a 2-1, definitely can get the offer if meet all the other requirements. So yes, we really care about, we do think the student's grade is the priority we're looking at, but we also take into considerations of the personal statement and the reference letter. We will make sure students, all the other documents we required are they can submit everything we need and to the right standard as well.
Is there like a time gap? Like, what's the time gap?
Time gap, you mean the turnaround time?
Yes. No, not the turnaround gap, like study gap, I mean.
Okay. I think we do have students who have been working for ages and then come back to study. This is not a problem at all. And there is no really any time limit to say you have to study your master after finishing your bachelor within a couple of years. There's no rule about that. And sometimes you may see students, they have their own career for 20 years and then come back to study, and it's not a problem at all. And you can continue study anytime in your life.
Okay.
Interesting. We've got a question about the PhD program, not the master's program. So in IDIG, I'll let Sophie answer maybe on the scale, but I mean, in IDIG, we do have PhD students. Yeah, so, and the entry requirement is a good undergraduate. You don't have to have a master's student, but in practice, most of our PhD students do have a master's because it's in everybody's interest, including theirs. 5 out of 7, that looks like a relatively high score, but to be honest, if you're interested in a PhD, I think that's a different conversation. PhDs are mainly self-funded, and there are many other criteria that we take into account, in particular the quality of your research proposal and your motivations and so on. So I think that we're here really today to talk about our master's programs.
Okay. Just also touch upon the entry requirement for PhD if any students might be interested in the future. So in Loughborough, when we are looking at PhD applications, the first qualification we look at is still your bachelor degree. So we still need to know how you are doing for your bachelor. If you have reached a 2-1, which is 5 in a 7-point scale, and you will be eligible for to apply for the PhD. And we also look at your master's GPA as well as the undergraduate as well. Next one, is there any funding or scholarship for PhD? Just like Helen mentioned, there are opportunities for funded and self-funded PhD opportunities in Loughborough's website. So this comes for both campuses. And when we have the search column, if you put funded or self-funded, it's very similar to some jobs. So we have the PhD opportunities. So if you need to check just from time to time, so there might be different opportunities for you and for the research topics you might be interested.
Okay, so in the absence of more questions, I don't know if you still have more things to say to the audience before we end the session. So if you have any more questions and you would also like to get more information about this whole session, you can send us an email or you can call me via the mail I sent to you, and We'll reply you. Yeah, over to you.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. And if you have questions in particular about the subjects and the courses and the programs, then Sophie and I will be very happy to take your questions. So thanks for listening, and thank you, Gloria. And thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Sophie. That was quite an interesting and interactive section.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, bye then.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.